Welcome to Vanguard Tutorials. Today we're going to talk about stacks. What is a stack? It's an elementary data structure that follows the last in first out approach. As suggested by the approach, if you have a set of bricks that you want to add to a container with only enough space width to place one at a time, you would have to place the bricks one on top of another. So in computer science we call this push. So we're pushing onto the stack. So therefore it will be a sequential manner. But what if we want to remove the bricks from the container or remove all from the container? What we would do is that we'd take them out one at a time, starting with the last brick that was added. And the last brick, so basically the last brick that is placed in the container will be the first to be taken out of the container. This process of removing the brick from the container is called pop. Okay, so we're going to demonstrate the concept of the container and the bricks. So we have a container here and we have a brick. So what we're going to do, so I place it there just to demonstrate, just to make sure that the brick can hold inside of the container. Okay, so if I want to add it to the container, what I will do is just first, before I do that, I'm going to duplicate the bricks. Okay, so we have 4 bricks. So if we wanted to add to the container to the stack, if we wanted to add the brick to the stack, what we'll do is just push this brick onto the into the container. And so what I'm going to do now is push all the bricks into the container. Okay, so now that all the bricks are inside the container, we need to actually remove the bricks from the container or from the stack. Now, would it be nice if we wanted to, example, remove this brick here, the second brick, but we can't remove it directly. So as I mentioned before, what we'll have to do is remove each brick individually. So starting with the last in, first out, and we continue the same process right throughout. That's how it would work. Okay, so how do we actually code this? So we're going to demonstrate coding this using Python. So I'm using Google Colabs. You can use PyCharm or Visual Studio Code or many other IDEs. But if, for example, your computer doesn't have an IDE on it, or your computer doesn't have enough space to do it, I would suggest using Google Colabs. It is free for use. So to create the stack, what I'm going to first do, I'm going to create a class that I'm going to call stack. So we'll start by class stack. Remember that in Python, a class must start with an uppercase. So first we need an initializer as an entry point into this class. So what we want inside of to be initialized is a set of bricks. So we need to tell Python that it's a list. Next, we need to know if the container is empty. So we're going to create a method. So methods use the snake case format according to the Python convention, naming convention. So let's call it is container empty. It will only take the reference type. So what we want to do, we want to check the length of the list to see if it is actually 0. So how we'll do that is that in Python we have the len function, which signifies length. So we'll say length of the bricks, so self dot bricks, because we're trying to say that it's what's in this context right now. We want to check that the length is equal to 0. That is how we'll know if it is indeed empty. Now what will happen, we don't have to return a true or false, because what will happen, this is a conditional statement that is happening right here. So what will happen actually is that it will return true if it is that it's equal to 0, or false if it is not equal to 0. So next, what we'll do, we need to create a method called push. So this is the add method. So this is the method that we're going to use to add things to the stack. So in this method, we're going to take two parameters. First, the self, so that's the reference, and we're going to also take a brick object. So we'll say self that bricks. So basically what we're going to do is append this new record. We're going to append this new record to the list. So we're going to add this new brick to the list of bricks. Okay. Next, we're going to create a pop method. So this is the method that is going to be used to actually remove bricks from our container. So def pop. You could call it whatever you like, but it's always best to be descriptive. So the reason we don't need to put an ID or anything to say, okay, find the brick that has this value, is because remember, in a stack, it's always the last one that comes out first. So we'll say, we'll just return self dot bricks pop. So this will remove the last one. So this looks fine, yes, but one thing I think, or we could say that is missing here, what happens if you try to pop all of the bricks inside of a stack and there's nothing that's left? It could cause an error. So it is recommended for best practice to check first before you try to pop that there is actually something inside of the container. So what we'll do, we'll use an if statement and say self dot, we'll call it is container empty method that we had created, is container empty, and if it is empty, what we'll do, we'll print a message to the console. So we'll say container is already empty. Then we'll return a false to signify that there wasn't an successful operation. Else, if it's not empty, then we'll carry out the pop operation. Now remember that in Python it uses indentation to understand the scope, so we need to put a tab to align this else statement. Okay, so the last method that we're going to create is one we call show container. So this is going to, as the name suggests, show everything inside of the container. Let's put a space in between. So show container and so we're just going to return the list. So self dot bricks. Okay, so save it. Then what we're going to do, we're going to run it just to make sure it runs. So inside of the Google Code Editor, it is recommended we can run it by pressing this button here, or we could use command in for macOS, or control in Windows plus enter, just to make sure there's no errors. Okay, so we have no errors. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a new file, or a new code block in this case, that's going to call the method. So what we'll say now is that we're going to create an object. So this object is going to call that stack class that we had just created. So we call it, so in this case we decide to call it stack, and then we put the object there to tell Python to reference that particular class. So as a test, we're going to try and push a record on the stack. So let's call it brick1. Okay, and let's test that it actually exists. So what we're going to do, we're just going to call the show container. So let's just create a for loop. So a for loop, and what we're going to do is find a brick inside of the bricks list. So we'll call the class, so stack dot show container, which, remember, container is going to return the full list. So then we'll put a print statement and print each brick, so we know exactly what exactly is inside of the container. So what we're going to do a test run, and you can see that brick 1 is inside of the container. Okay, so let's add a couple more bricks. So let's add about 5 more bricks, so we have 6 bricks inside of the stack. Okay, so if we were to run it, we should see bricks 1 to 6, and brick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so what we'll do now, we will try to pop all those bricks. So what we're going to do, we're going to write a pop. So first we're going to try and just pop 1, just to demonstrate that it's adding by pushing and it's also popping. So let's just pop 1, and that should, and you can guess which one is going to remove. It should actually remove brick 6. So we'll say stack dot pop. Then I'm just going to call this function here again so that we can see. So what I'm going to do, for traceability purposes, I'm just going to put a print statement saying before pop, and a next one that says after pop. We could actually have made the for loop a method, but to keep this tutorial simple, we decided to just repeat it. So what I'm going to do now is run it again, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so before pop we had 1, 2, 6, and then after pop you notice we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can see that it works, that it removed only the last that came in. So last in, first out. So what the last test that we're going to do, we're going to try and repeat the pop method about 7 or 8 times to see what will happen if we try to pop more than what exists inside of the stack. So let's replicate this. Okay, so 1 2 3 4 5, about 8. Okay, so when we run, let's see what happens. So if you notice that before pop you have all 6, and then it removes everything, and for instances where there is nothing there, then it actually just returns a message that the container is already empty instead of crashing. Thank you. In the next tutorial series, part of this tutorial series, we will tackle queues, and we'll go into more and more complex data structures until we get to things like heap sort, bubble sort, and time complexities of these algorithms. Thank you. Please like and subscribe, and see you in the next episode. Thank you.